So what's good, you guys? We are back on another quarantine episode, and I have a special guest, Nurse Tamu from Seattle, Washington, on my show today. So how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yes, you are always welcome, and I thank you for coming on and spilling your cup full with everyone. So, you being a nurse, how did you integrate your passion with this career field that you chose?
You know, that is a really good question, and I had to think about it for a moment. I don't know that I have found or that I'm completely fulfilling my passion at this moment. I am a caretaker, and I enjoy providing and caring for others, as well as making them happy, predicting the things that they need, as well as giving them that something that a lot of times people think that they can't provide for themselves in the sense of health care. But nursing has a lot to offer, and I don't think that I've gotten to the absolute passion just yet.
So what is your passion? What is like deep down? What do you love
Um, I don't think that it's rooted in any one thing. It For me, I find myself to be most content when I am involved with people, and I am not confined by too many politics and too much public relations. And right now, the level of nursing that I currently am in, there's a lot of politics involved, especially in this time of COVID. We're beginning to see the politics coming out for job security and what that means on the finance end of it.
Yeah. So I definitely wanted to briefly talk about COVID-19. You being a nurse since the pandemic, how intense has it been? Because we've seen you guys on the front lines, and we commend you guys for working hard. We've seen people who quit their jobs. Another nurse actually committed suicide. So how intense has it been for you as a nurse in this position?
I don't feel as though it's more or less intense. And I am positive that I have a controversial view as far as COVID is concerned. But over on this side, in comparison to what I've seen on the news and social media, it doesn't feel more intense. It doesn't feel less intense because in taking care of the patients, you do have your hands full. You do have to make sure that you have your personal protective equipment on, and that you're following the policies that have been put in place to as much as your ability based on the care that's needed for the patient. But it doesn't feel more intense to me. Just to give the caveat to that, I'm an acute care nurse. For someone who is an ICU nurse, that may be a very different experience, because an ICU nurse in general is going to ideally have one or two patients depending on the area that they work in. And so for them, having a COVID patient may be indeed more intense, because they're spending a lot of time. You gown up, and when you have everything on and you go into that room, you're trying to do everything that you possibly can in one trip. And for some people, depending on how sick that patient is or what the interventions that you need to do, you find yourself in the room with a patient for basically an 8 hours, for 12 hours. It can be a lot more intense than if that patient was not COVID, because of the process that you have to go through to get in and to get out of the room, and their level of sickness that I am not having to experience right now on my day-to-day.
Okay. All right. So I like that. So before you settled in Seattle, you were a travel nurse. And so what have you seen across the board with healthcare system? And what do you think needs to be consistent?
So nursing is nursing wherever you go.
Right.
What changes are the policies, are the politics, what rules, as it were, that each facility puts into place, who can do what, how it's done, little things when it comes to drawing blood and doing blood sugars or EKGs, and your nurse's aides. Those are the things that you see that are different. Those things being consistent would be very beneficial. But then we wouldn't be the capitalist country that we are if that were the case. In addition, the healthcare documentation. So where I am in Washington, almost, if not all, of the hospitals are on are using electronic documentation, but that isn't the end of the statement. There are still multiple options when it comes to electronic documentation that are available, and that can suck. So my hospital currently is one that is possibly going to go to Epic. When I was in New York State, the hospital that I worked at, we were Cerner. I've worked at a few other hospitals in the area in Washington that are already Epic, or that I've helped move into Epic. And so if all of the hospitals just used one system, even if it was a variation of that one system, using one system and everyone being on board, that would also be, it would make a big difference, not only for the healthcare workers, but also for the care that the patient is receiving.
Okay, yeah, and I definitely you also said when we were talking previously how just the amount of care and effort that the nurses give or whoever's in the hospital gives, you can see a difference in that now that you're in Seattle and you like that tight knit bond that y'all have with the patients, which I have with each other as well. So yes. So in this occupation, when we talked, we compared books to experience, and you said that experience is something that's way better that you learned more from. And so, what tips do you have for aspiring nurses out there, or someone who's still in the books right
now? One of the first things that I did and that I would recommend to anyone is to get a job in the field. So become a nurse's aide. Go become, if you're not a nurse's aide, anything that gives you direct patient contact is going to help you very much understand. But a nurse's aide, when you're talking about becoming a registered nurse, there are a lot of basics that just come from dealing, touching, caring for that patient that I think sometimes nurses take for granted. There are a lot of us out there who will praise the assistive personnel that we have out there, and they're not licensed positions always. You can become a certified nurse assistant, that you have a certification, you have to go to class, but not every facility requires you to go and take that training. A lot of facilities will train you on the job. That way they can nurture you and kind of shape you into what it is that they want. But being a nurse's assistant in some form or fashion will give you a lot of experience to let you know, is this something that you are very interested in doing? Do you enjoy this? Do you want to see more, do more? Do you want to move past the bedside role, or do you want to be in the bedside role? That it's going to give you a lot of information that sometimes if you haven't had that experience, when you're finally on the floor doing your clinicals, or once you're a nurse and you come out, it really hits you.
Yeah, I bet.
You're not always going to have someone to help you wipe someone or get them out of the bathroom, help them move from a chair to wherever else. And so you need to understand that that's a part of your job. even when there's someone else there who's doing it for you.
Okay, got you. So just be ready. Be ready to have whatever job they send you in. When it lands in your lap, be ready to work. I say get. I say be ready so you don't have to get ready. So I
And
believe
I
that.
mean, research really contributes to that. Do your research. Do your research. Where is it that you want to go? I think that nursing is very appealing to many people. It is a second career for a lot of persons, and so you see you see a good mix of those people who are young and fresh out of school, like went to a 4-year school right out of high school and they're barely old enough to drink, or get into somewhere where you need to be 21 and older, and they're nurses and they have no idea of what it means to really care for another person, because they have just moved out of the phase of learning about themselves in college, to those people who have multiple children and maybe were teachers, were engineers. I mean, you see a lot of different professions that move into nursing, and it's just important to know why are you there and what do you want from it, so that you don't get caught at the bedside doing something that you don't enjoy, whether it be that you're caught there for the money or you're caught there because you don't know what the other options are.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that is great advice. I hope you guys are listening and taking notes. So, yes. So, we're going to take a break and it's game time with K Marine. So, for our game today, the game is called Reminisce. So, I have a list of things I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you your first whatever, and you just have to explain, give us a short little story, what you remember from this time. So, the first one is, take us back to the first time, well, I guess your first semester in nursing school.
I remember my first semester, so I went to a 2-year program. I currently have an associate's degree of nursing, that's an ADN, and I'm working on my BSN right now. And so I remember in my first year, the very first time that we went on clinicals, and they start you out with the introduction to caring for the patient, getting comfortable with touching the patient and seeing someone else's body and giving baths, because again, you have to do a skin assessment. That's a part of your job. And I was already working in the hospital at that point. I was on an inpatient rehab, and so I was already familiar with it, and I just remember it being so foreign, and so many of my colleagues at the time being hesitant to do anything with the patient, hesitant to touch them, like very concerned about the white that they have on, and not concerned about what it means to actually step in and care for someone. And I have to say that I'm very glad that I did the 2-year program. I think that there's a great preparation that comes from, this is what you need when you hit the floor, before we start to tackle the administrative business side of, this is what you need to be a manager and to be in the corporate world.
Hey, I got it. So, first time in nursing school. I like it. So, take us back to your very first time traveling as a nurse.
Oh, I was nervous. So my first assignment was actually Washington. I came to it was Edmonds, Washington, which is a little north of Seattle, and I didn't know what to expect. I'm a young Black female traveling alone. I drove across the country from upstate New York to Washington, and I just was like, okay, prepare myself with a smile. You got this. It's gonna be okay. One of the things that I did is I was initially a day shift nurse when I was in upstate New York, and I went to nights because of my apprehension for what I was gonna experience with the doctors, with the nurses, with the patient. Things are busier on the day shift. Everyone is available and everything goes faster, knowing where things are, being able to react quicker. And there's less of that on night shift. You have a little bit more time to acclimate yourself. It was not bad. Actually, I was nervous, but it was a good experience because my first experience was one where a lot of other nurses, travel nurses, were present. And so while it was my first, I was able to converse with many other nurses of various backgrounds from different places and get a lot of experiences from others.
Yeah, I bet that just being able to network and talk definitely takes you out your comfort zone, but you make the best of it. You know, it works out great for you. So, what is the first time that you had a difficult patient? Or is it just so many to name?
I remember, I think I still have a scar on one of my underarms from a patient that we had to restrain, who was somewhere between delirious and psychotic. She was an elderly individual, and she was not happy about needing to stay in the bed, or have, I think we needed to put an IV in her, and trying to get her to a place where we would be most safe, we the staff. She bit me, and that was the first time that I have experienced that, and I'm pretty sure that I still have the scar on my underarm. And since then, I've experienced a better organization when it comes to a combative or problematic patient that you're needing to restrain, which equals not reaching over the patient's mouth. And having, I mean, there were probably 4 or 5 of us in the room, but not being in a position where something like that is possible. You know, each person takes a limb. You have someone at the head to help control that type of situation.
Okay, so y'all got a whole procedure. You gotta think of every possible situation when doing that. So yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so I want you to take us back to your first time when you had to stick somebody with a needle. I hate needles. I can't. I like getting tattoos, but shots, needles, oh, I can't do it. So just take us back to the first time you did that.
So my first time sticking someone with a needle was not as a nurse. It was as a nursing aide. At the time, we were patient care associates in Albany, New York. And I actually requested the opportunity to do more of it. And so I was trained as a phlebotomist so that I could draw blood on my unit, because I knew that I was going into nursing school and I was doing the prerequisites. And so I was like, I'm going to have to draw blood. I'm going to have to do this, let's get this practice right now.
Yeah.
And I still get nervous sometimes because I don't like sticking people multiple times. I don't like hurting people if it's uncomfortable, but you got to push through. So, and you don't get better without practicing. Yeah. I do remember, squatting, trying to get the best position, having all my supplies there, trying to hold the skin just right. Drawing blood, in my opinion, is easier than placing a peripheral intravenous peripheral intravenous access device. But it was okay. I got blood like the first or second time. I did it all right. When they train you, they give you an arm that's fake. They give you fake skin, and then they send you to a place where you have people who are alert and oriented and kind and aware that they're gonna get stuck, and agree to having someone sticking them both for IVs and for drawing blood, but you still got to do it a number of times before it's just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go and do this and it's fine and I know I'm gonna get it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was nerve-wracking, and still some days I still sweat a little bit when I go into a room if I don't know the patient.
Okay, I got you. So yeah, commend those people who volunteer, because it could not be me. I could not do it. Can't look at it. I hate it. So yeah. So last one, I want you to take us back to your first time where you were like in like an emergency situation and you had to think fast, think on your toes.
I had a patient who had a central access device in her neck, like right around her collarbone here. And I was changing the dressing. This is overnight here in Washington. And she stopped responding to me while I was changing the dressing. And I was like, hello? So here, the hospital that I was at has something called a rapid response team. And when you call a rapid response, they come and they assist you. But it was very scary. She got clammy. She went gray. I don't recall what the ultimate conclusion was as to why she had that reaction. I was very freaked out, and I was like, that's the last time I'm changing anybody's dressing at like 5 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the morning. By the time the team got there, she had recovered a little bit, but she was definitely clammy, pretty close to gray, still slow to respond. And I talked to my people. We got the team in. We tried to figure out what was going on. She recovered. She stayed on the unit. Life went on. I think they may have adjusted her narcotics or something, but it was freaky. Freaky and scary, very scary. In the aftermath, you don't realize that you're sweating and that you're as well. Sometimes you can be scared and you freeze. I didn't freeze, but I don't think that I realized how concerned or nervous and I was, and what my body was doing to react to those responses until after it's over and the patient is okay. And then you're like, all right, well, I have other patients that I need to see. Oh my goodness, I'm so done. And like, it's the last time I changed a dressing. I got time for this.
Yeah, I'm sure your adrenaline was pumping the whole time. But I guess at the end of the day, you kind of got that experience. You were able to handle the situation as best as possible. So yeah, so that was the end of Game Time, called Reminisce. So thank you.
Game Time. Oh my goodness.
So yes, thank you for your many nursing stories. I've enjoyed them. So we're going to get back into the question. So as a Black woman and a nurse, what kind of mindset do you enter the hospital in? And like, how do you carry yourself every day?
Well, when I approach anyone, I approach them in authenticity. I don't walk out the door thinking I am a Black woman and this is what people see. I approach my day and most people as this is me and this is what you see. At work, I carry myself with the utmost professionalism. I usually match. We wear blue. I often have blue, gray, or black on, and whatever my t-shirt color is, then my head wrap tends to match that. It is noticed. It is probably one of the things that stands out about me. But it's even in wrapping my hair and knowing that it either has a crown concept to it, or there's the wrap in the back with the bun. It's not until I'm going into someone who's an elderly, usually a white person, or someone who has a language barrier, that it comes to my mind that I'm a young appearing Black person. Otherwise, I'm just a female who is going to greet you and offer you care and give you the, take care of you the best that I can. Oh, right. My skin is brown. That's true. How about that? It really isn't something that comes into play until I'm in an environment where there's a topic or a situation that the other person is more aware of it. It is more often that the patient or my colleague is commenting, whether it be on my head wrap, on my skin color, if I have makeup on, it's those people who bring it to my attention. It's not something that I notice or am hyper aware of, because it's my everyday. I put on clothes, I make sure my clothes are presentable, and I leave the house.
Gotcha. And it's just like that. And you take on the day as a nurse. So yes, I'm glad that you had a positive experience and you just go in with confidence, just knowing who you are. So yes, when you are offered new opportunities and new experiences, it usually has to take you out of your comfort zone. So I want to know, how did you adapt being taken out of your comfort zone?
So for the shifting of the comfort zone, I find asking questions. I ask, some people think, an excessive amount of questions. However, if you don't know and you don't ask, then no, you're the only person who's at fault. So whenever I am unclear on something, I don't know how to do it, I don't know where to find it, I'm in a hurry, the first thing that I do is find someone who knows more than I do or is more comfortable. That is their regular area, their profession. So whether I'm in a new environment or I'm dealing with something that I've not dealt with before, the first thing that I do is ask someone who knows more than me. As a travel nurse, my first adjustment to transitioning out of a comfort zone of changing areas, changing coasts. I went from the East Coast to the West Coast, and I didn't know what I was getting myself into until I came over here. And what I did to compensate for that was to go to night shift. Turns out that I love it. I'm still a night shift worker, and I look at day shift and I'm like, yeah, no, thank you.
That's great. So you being a travel nurse, you just talked about that. You transitioned from upstate New York, as you mentioned, to Seattle. So first, I want to ask, why Seattle?
I was just thinking about the fact that I didn't want to be in upstate New York anymore, and I wanted to see more of the country. So there was a professor, I feel like he was an English professor, and he recommended Seattle. So I went to nursing school, got some experience, became a traveler, and came over here. After my first assignment, I went southeast to Florida. I went to Colorado. I even did experience Eastern Washington and Spokane. And the experience, the welcome, the interaction that I had with people in Seattle is what brought me to come back.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Yes, I've been in Seattle and it's like beautiful. But of course I have to ask, is the weather really bad like everyone thinks it is? Like rainy all the time, gray, dark?
It is gray a lot. Yes. We are in the spring, summertime now, where we're getting to the time where it will rain more, and we'll also have more sunny, warm days. It will get to the 80s and maybe even the 90s. The rain is nothing here. And when you say it rains all of the time, it doesn't. People think, I even thought coming out here, that it rains all the time. It does not rain all of the time. Okay, for all of you who are listening, don't feel the need to come move here. You can be a tourist and then leave, please and thank you. But it's not always rainy. It really is. It depends on what time of day you're outside, what area you're in, and what time of year it is. So even for someone who would have natural hair, Black girls in their natural hair, and you're like, oh my goodness, I just had a press or something like that. For me with locks, when you curl it, you're going to use product, or you're going to sit under heat, or even, my Lord, exercising, right? The rain, I'm going to do more damage by going to the gym than by the rain that's usually happening outside.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So walking in rain, I'm pretty sure for you with the locks, I am locked up too. It is much more convenient, and you don't have to worry about, things like that, the weather outside. So yes,
Yes.
I love it. I love it. So what is the food like there? I love seafood. I know that you don't, but what kind of food do you guys have out there?
People who come to the western side of the mountain, that's tends to be how they describe it. The western side of the mountain, the Seattle area, they do really enjoy the seafood. You have a lot of fresh options. I like fish that has tails and fins, like snapper, tilapia, salmon. Salmon is big here, but it's not the go-to cuisine for me, or that I'm looking for. What I would say, I enjoy Thai food and Indian food, and there's not a lack of that here, as well as teriyaki. Teriyaki is everywhere, every city, every corner, pretty much. And so those are my go-tos right now that are different from when I was over on the East Coast. Is teriyaki and Thai very much available.
Okay, well, the teriyaki sounds delicious. I don't think I've ever tried Thai before, but that's definitely something I will try now. So when I visited Seattle, one thing that stuck out is the diversity, the different people that you see just walking down a block. It's I wouldn't say, I guess, kind of a culture shock. Culture shock to me, being from Little Rock, Arkansas, down south, just seeing all these different people, ethnicity, culture, all this stuff. So how do you put yourself into that? Like, do you enjoy it? Do you like it? Do you look at it, or it's just another thing that you just go about doing, seeing every day?
I think that I have a unique experience coming here as a travel nurse. I think that the experience as someone who's a visitor or tourist is different than when you are a resident. And so I initially thought that the environment was very diverse when I was a travel nurse, when I was a tourist mindset. But as a resident, I found that the diversity is superficial. And that's not to say that there is not diversity. Washington is a sanctuary state, and you see that most in Seattle, being a bit of a sanctuary city. And so we do have a lot of people who are fleeing and their country, or coming here for a better and new experience. We do have a diverse amount of different cultures.
Yeah.
There are Filipino, there are different Chinese, and there is a plethora of Africans. And so each group then segregates themselves, and it's hard to break into that group. It's hard to find that community or that tribe if you're not a part of that group. So the diversity actually ends up being segregating.
Okay, interesting look on that. I thank you for explaining us, putting us in Seattle, Washington. So yes. So Miss Tamu, Nurse Tamu, I want to thank you for coming on to my podcast to give your cup full. I believe that everyone got a good cup full today. So thanks for everyone that tuned in. Make sure you guys are staying safe, quarantine. Well, we're opening back up now, so make sure you're staying safe, social distancing, staying confident, motivated, and grinding out here. And I will see you guys on the next Kupfull.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kennedi, and I hope that you enjoyed this cupful with
Yes,
Miss
I
Kennedi.
did. Thank you guys. See you.